All right, and hello everyone, and welcome to the 10th June 2022, this week's meeting for the Node.js API. Before we get started with our regular agenda, does anyone have any announcements they would like to make? No, all right. So then let me share my screen and we will go through the normal agenda. All right, so we've got the milestones. So the first issue that we have is the drive towards full coverage. I did not see Jack come on. But let's see if there are any PRs or issues for testing. Oh, yes, there's still this one for the new target that we can take a look at. And I believe that is the only one open so far for the testing. So let's continue. We have still issues to discuss. Let's see if anything new was added. We just have this migration one, which I think is talking about the proxy implementation.
Yeah, I started to move it to examples folder, but it's not complete yet.
Okay. No worries. So we'll just look out for that that PR or whatnot whenever you get a chance to finish that up. All right. Then tracking issues for modules that were ported over. Don't think there's been any additional context on here. But then we always go to npm node add-on API. Still looking like it normally does, slight increase. So I think all of that is good.
Kevin, I have a topic. If
is it this one?
Yeah, this one. Yeah, but I open an issue on AB stable node. Yeah. Okay. So.
Okay. So for some context, let's look at the
yeah. We have
here.
Yeah, we have this repo and that include the header file for Node-API, but this is also a package that is available on npm. And in the package export, the list of symbols that are in Node API, and the include there to retrieve the headers, no, and we removed. Okay, essentially it's all okay, but this first release does not include the experimental function. So if now CMake.js use this, and if a developer used the experimental feature, essentially you will get an error, a compiler error, because you don't have the symbols in the include file in the either files, and this could be a problem. The idea is to add the experimental function, because it's compatible with how we release the new Node API version. So just for example, now we are at the Node API version 8, and we have 2 or 3 experimental feature. So when we have this function in the either file, and we export in the from the symbol.js. If you want the list of the experimental feature, we have another issue. Enable in ABI stable node repo.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You need to go on the list of the issues.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Node API version 9. It's a proposed. Okay. So now we have essentially we have these 4 experimental function, and the rest of the function are part of Node API version 8. So when we create the new version 9, we move this function out from the experimental, and continue to go forward. The only problem that remains is that when we will add a new experimental function, we need to add to change the include files in this repo, and add these new symbols that we export. So we need some sort of synchronization between of what we do in the node core repo and this. So conceptually it's okay, but yeah, it would be good have some to do this in automatic way. So yeah, okay. So
right.
I don't know. Yeah, this is my idea. I don't know what is yours.
Okay, I'm a little confused as to how the list of symbols ends up getting used. Do you have any knowledge of that?
Yeah.
Like if I'm compiling something, how would I be able to tell my compiler that these are the symbols that exist?
These essentially this symbol are used to create .lib file or a DLL file, depends on essentially the compiler that you are using, but you need this because in Windows you cannot use you cannot skip the check of the symbols. No, you cannot say okay, don't worry about this symbol. I promise that when I use the compiled library, the symbols exists. So in GCC, you use unresolved. I don't remember the flag, but you have a flag to do this. And in Windows, you need to build this kind of library. So
right. Okay.
and in CMake.js, they if you go on the issue, on top, when no, in the issue in Abyss the issue in Abyss stable node repo. Yeah. I reported that the link. Yeah, if you go on the CMake, this is the paracast that introduced the usage of Node API headers here, and at one point they go through the symbols and create a set of symbols, and below. So and then they create a file, no, and I think that is a lib file. If so this is the usage for the list of symbols.
I see. Okay. So you don't need to know that the full signature of the methods or whatnot. It's just the name of the symbol. Okay. All right, that makes sense. So then here, what you were recommending is to add, let's go back to the root comment here, to add an experimental key to the list of symbols. Because right now we have it's broken down by the different versions. So V7, V8 and whatnot. So you would like to have an experimental key as well, experimental property that points to the experimental APIs.
That is the composition of the last stable version, and plus the and the experimental function. So what is experimental?
Okay, is it possible to target like version 7 and still use the experimental ones, or does the experimental have to be the most recent version?
Okay, so
right, because I mean, maybe it would be better just to have experimental as only the experimental, and then it's up to the user to do that joining themselves.
Right. Yeah, so in this way, you can target, for example, version 5, and maybe some experimental feature. But the builder like CMake.js can sniff the experimental flag, and if the experimental is enabled, provided, so they only need to add the experimental feature.
See, okay, I know I just said that, but now I'm thinking, that really doesn't make sense to like target version 5 with experimental, because eventually the experimental will be no longer experimental and it won't be included in version 5, right?
Yeah, because okay, okay, this is in the way how we release a new version of Node.API. The experimental feature is start from the last version, not that we released.
Right.
So I don't care if in the version 5 there were other features. They are now in the version 6. So I only need to export the experimental that now in this moment are experimental.
Right.
And we have two solutions. Or we export all the signposts like the signposts that constitute the last stable version plus the experimental feature, or only the experimental. To be consistent, we should export all the signposts.
I think so too. I think that makes the most sense, because there would never really be a use case in my mind where somebody is targeting an older Node API version plus experimental, because eventually those things would no longer be experimental and go into a stable release. Yeah. And that stable release is still not going to be the one that you were targeting before. It's going to be a new one, right? So I think it makes sense to do the same thing that you've done and just have the experimental key be a inclusion of the latest version. I think that makes sense.
Okay, so I will proceed doing this, and I want to study a solution to synchronize with what we do in the core. We have another issue about this in Node-API headers that, if I will remember, opened Lucas opened, I think. Yeah.
Yes, automation. Okay, right. And
I actually think like the fact that we're creating, what I understand, we need this file, this JavaScript file to create a lib file for MSVC, like for Microsoft Visual Studio Compiler. Is
yeah,
correct?
yes.
But it's also used with GCC. Yeah, if you use MinGW, GCC on Windows, So you need the same file, but in that case, you need to build a DLL file. So
yeah, but I was thinking like it can be alternative way to do it, just simply using our header files. Because technically speaking, compiler already supposed to generate all these things. If we just simply have, I hope one possible solution could be to have these header files, our kind of Node API header files, and create some kind of fake DLL with these files. And as part of this creation of DLL, it would create us all these different def files and lib files.
Well, so we don't, okay, so we have these headers here. Okay, and you were thinking that it's possible that the caller, the user would be able to generate the symbols off of the headers. Is that, am I understanding that right?
Right, yes. So in this case, we will have one source of truth. It just, we definitely need to do what Nicole suggests. I was thinking like as you said like, about next step, how to improve this process in future. So I hope it's possible just to, an alternative solution, just using compiler and using these header files.
I see, right. I mean, it is also worth to note that, I mean, automation would be good, but then on the flip side, it's not, we don't really update the version that often, you know. But if we do the automation, it would be less error prone, you know, you just run a command. So it really depends in my mind how the person would be, whoever's building the automation would end up determining how to add those new symbols and create the new JavaScript file. Because we don't store the version in the header itself. They're all like based off of the macros of the NAPI version to determine which ones get included in at runtime, at build time rather. If I'm remembering, Node NAPI version, right?
Yeah, version.
So I don't know. I don't know if we can have the compiler output, because I don't think we want to have binaries on this repo. So I think it makes sense to leave it as sort of the simple, whatever is easily parsable by a caller, which in our case is the JavaScript exports. So I don't know if there's a way to generate that file via the compiler, for example, running it with different macro definition of an API version. I don't know really how that would work, but I think whoever would like to take that challenge of developing an automation tool, we just need to figure out some way to either parse this file or look at the compiler to see if there's a way to generate the list of symbols at
Yeah, it would be great. But my knowledge are not enough to do this.
Right. Do we have how do we determine experimental? Experimental. Do we not have...
in this header file, we removed the experimental. So to be consistent between what we export from JavaScript and the header file. So now, if we want to add, I need to go in the Node core repo and use the original files and add the experimental function to the export object.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's not difficult. The problem maybe is in the automation to synchronize in the future.
Right. Okay. Well, we still have the issue of synchronization. That issue still exists. So we can now I have too many tabs open. So here we can say we discussed in the 10 June Node-API meeting. Let me start with the root issue that we had, which was this one here. Yes, okay. But this one is closed. Okay. And then we have this one here.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right. So we discussed in the 10 June API meeting to include the experimental APIs under a new experimental property, like Nicola suggested in copy link. Okay, and this property will include all of the previous versions symbols as well. Okay. Since someone using experimental APIs would only target the most recent Node API version, it doesn't make sense to target a previous version and still use experimental APIs, since those APIs would never be included in the previous version.
Yeah.
Okay. So we can comment on this.
Thanks.
And then in this automation one, I'll just say that we discussed in the 10 June Node-API meeting that it would still be useful to have automation to update the symbol, the exported symbols, as well as
the header files. Yeah.
The header file.
Yeah.
Okay. The automation could either parse the header file and create the new symbols JavaScript file, or some possible approaches for the automation. Parse the header file and create new JavaScript. Look at the ability for the compiler to parse the header and to provide some output that can be used to create new symbols JavaScript file. Okay.
Sounds
I think
both options sounds the same, right?
Well, this one could be like parsing the header file, like the text of the header file, whereas this one would be running a compiler, passing some options, and then then the compiler itself outputs what the symbols are, and then we take the compiler's output of those symbols to create the JavaScript file.
So in our projects, what we do, like effectively Clang compiler, it has some kind of Clang tool. So there is a way to use Clang compiler and look at the whole AST. So Clang compiler can parse it and look at AST. We look at AST, and out of AST we can generate some code. We actually use it in some of our projects. So we have it's one approach we can get, and another approach which we could use. Yeah, we still need Clang tools because yeah.
I just like to mention like Michael mentioned, we usually doesn't release Node.API versions very soon or quicker, so it's very not often that we may need to update the file. So I'm not sure if we need to export the symbols to a separate file. I don't know if it's worth it to do the automation, since my original intention to the issue is that we just synchronize the files, not to export the symbols, since that may be a very burden work to do.
Good point. So in this case, what we could do, like I think ideal solution could be like to simplify the whole process. What if we use some kind of a GitHub bot, and this GitHub bot will just say on daily basis, we'll check in Node.js core. If it sees like this header files changed, it creates new PR automatically before all these changes. And somebody who's supposed to review and approve this PR sees if this PR has a new public functions. If there are new public functions, this person also updates this JavaScript file.
We don't even need to run the actions daily. You see, we don't often update the file. So if we do update the file, we can, like say, manually trigger the action. It could be a choice.
Okay.
So you're saying it could be something driven by special kind of tags, by tag driven, like maybe we have like special tag like API changed, and it will actually
I'm not sure if GitHub can manually trigger the GitHub action, but it might worth to explore the best approaches, since most of the time the actions won't do anything, since we are not going to update the header files very frequently.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. You can provide a trigger to GitHub Actions to run at a certain time. So it can be automated. But like you said, it won't be updated that frequently. So it may just make more sense just to keep it manual. And then that's just part of our release process of a new Node API version, is just to run the action on headers manually, and then update the JavaScript symbols manually as well.
Yeah, I just like to mention that that could be an option if people think that is acceptable.
I'm wondering, I mean, since the symbols would end up needing to be updated manually anyways, I'm wondering if it makes sense for it to be some sort of command that's included, some sort of a command that the person runs manually on their machine, and then that would end up pulling the header file, or yeah, okay. I mean, let's write some thoughts down, and create a PR for updating the header file. Someone would need to manually update the PR to change the symbols file with new symbols added. Okay, then secondly, have some command in the package that would update the headers, and then update the symbols file. Right. Okay. To me, I think the easiest approach would be the second one here.
I believe we can start with a simple one and
yeah,
try to see if there is any improvement.
Yeah. Because with the GitHub action, not exactly sure how you'd have to set up some sort of, I mean, I guess the repo is public, so anybody would be able to make a PR, but I'm not sure how to trigger the PR creation from a GitHub action and everything like that. I think that would, it's definitely doable, but I think it would take some research into how to perform it. Whereas just having some command in the package, which, you know, could download the most recent node header from core, and then, you know, put it in your working directory, and then you can just go from there and create the branch manually and sort of update the symbols. Let's make this number.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
The script sounds like a simple solution.
Yeah, yeah. Yes. In discussions, it sounds like number one is a simpler approach that we should take. We can then, especially since it's something that doesn't happen, you know, that often, you know. And then I want to talk about updating the symbols file down here. We'll move this here. And then I'll say, since the symbol, since this is not something that occurs frequently, it may not be super beneficial to have an automated process to update the symbols. Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. So we discussed in the meeting various approaches to automation to update the exported symbols as well as the header file. All right. So then we discussed how to do the header file. and the symbols file. Oh, okay, not a number one, solution one. Okay. I think this looks good. Anybody have anything else they would like to add to this? All right, we will make the comment. All right, so I think that settles that discussion for both how we want to update the symbols file for the experimental as well as automation. Does anyone have anything else to discuss regarding this before we move on? All right, then let's move on. We can go back here and close all to the right. All right, we are on the burn down list of issues. Does anyone else have anything specific they would like to bring up? Otherwise, we'll just look at the list quickly.
The last issue, I didn't understand what he want.
This one here?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, I also took a look at this and was not really sure.
Yeah, what is his needs? So I don't know.
Right, like it sounds like he wants to make multiple. So this seems to be part of the maybe like an object wrap.
Object wrap. Okay.
Mm-hmm. And he wants to have an export of his add-on with multiple object wraps. So the problem is going to be using this set instance data because you can only have one value for your instance data. So if he was going to call, like, but I will return multi-object, how to write the function reference. Okay, so I think what he wants to do is persist the constructor for multiple things in the instance data. And since he's using a function reference, he's only able to store the instance data of that single function reference. But he would need to maybe make an object reference where the properties of that object are the
object wrap.
It would be an object where, yeah, the properties of that object are the object wrap ones, right? I think that's what he would like to do.
So he need to persist what he are exporting here, essentially.
Yes, but now, is it really necessary to persist the constructor of your object wrap, as long, because if you're passing it to the node side, then the node side would be responsible for handling all of the references and whatnot, right? It would only be if
the original. I believe the original intention is that we can construct the class from the native side, or
right.
You can't get the constructor, right?
Yes. Okay. You're right. So if he's constructing from the native side, then we need to persist it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So we can answer this one real quick. So the function reference, so persisting the function reference in your set instance data would only, let's see, I want to say set instance data only allows one value to be persisted. Any additional calls to this function will overwrite the previous instance data. It looks like you are using object wrap. So what you can do is create an object reference with the properties of this object. You can create an object with the properties of this object being the constructors returned by your internal and wrap get class, and then use an object reference to persist this inside the set instance data. Okay.
Yeah.
Then you can construct your objects on the native side by getting the instance data as an object reference and accessing the specific properties for which class, whichever class you want to construct. Does that make sense?
Yes.
All right. So that is the only new one.
Yeah.
I have not had any time to work on this one. What we decided last week was to try to make a standalone example. But I think let's see, he added something here, adding set interval, and so for some context, this is the issue where this user is making a lot of async workers, a lot being over 10,000 objects, and we're getting various crashes in different locations inside V8. And so now he said that he can try to work around calling set interval and having an external queue that runs process in the set interval callback. So this, I think, is one of his native methods. Excuse me. This did not work because there are errors when calling an API persistent. This looks like the same error that I had. Let's see, persist, create reference, new reference, global handles create. And I think one of mine was also that.
Yeah, this is.
This is something with reset, so it's not creating. This is one with a thread safe function, and was it this one? Yeah, maybe it was this one then. Unsure. But let's see. I mean, I think it's still. Yeah, I think we'll need to try to do what we had suggested. And let me put this in. We discussed in Node-API meeting to try to make a standalone reproduction of this problem if we mimic the several thousand creation of async workers in a standalone test, and we do not see the crash, we can hopefully assume that there's something incorrect in your code that's causing this crash. Okay, so I'll continue working on this. In order to try and get a similar crash or rule out native. Okay, I think we can just leave it at that. All right, we have a couple of minutes left. Vladimir, I believe you used to had some pull requests open. Has there been any work on those?
Yeah, I didn't do progress on mine, but two of them I think it's need to be decided. Like for example, this backport, it seems to be it's passing CI, and I think it's whoever could merge it should merge it, I guess.
Mm-hmm. And this was the one fixing the size call. Is that correct?
No, it was modular registration. Like, remember, we had some issues with inside of a Microsoft compiler. With
yes. Okay. Right. All right.
And yes, size issue. Right. It was unit test issue which prevented us from automated backporting. So I created this explicit pull request. And I guess like I just need somebody to jump on this ref type changes. If you could look at this at some point. I still didn't merge with finalizers yet, but this one is ready to review.
Okay. All right. And then there was a new one created from to discuss inheritance. And he split the define class into declare and instantiate. And was having some back and forth with Anna. But I think there's still a little bit more work to do here. And the primary thing was that it was the reuse. It was a reuse of this value here, of NAPI value, because this is supposed to be specific for JavaScript values, and the function template that was being returned from the declare class was not.
I was wondering, one of the problems is that not every engine exposes a API or function template.
Yeah, this is my same concern.
Okay. Okay, let's put that here.
Yeah, Hermes for sure does not have a functional or object templates. Object templates, function templates, only V8 specific.
Yeah, I believe it's best to post the document link about the API requirement document link here.
Okay.
I believe it's on the, let me see.
Yeah, if you can pull that up while I continue typing and on the tangent Node-API meeting. We have a concern.
I posted the link to the chat.
Thank you.
Okay. How do I get to the chat? No. I have because I'm sharing my screen, I guess. Oh, there it is, chat. Okay. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right.
Right. Okay. Okay. That not all engines would support this function template use case. Please take a look at the and what did we call it here? And then we will quote, new APIs should be agnostic. All right. Okay. And then we know for a fact that Hermes does not support function template, right?
Yes, as far as I know, like I was kind of spent like last few months in the fall, last fall, playing with Hermes and implemented Node.API for Hermes, and definitely I didn't see anything like a function template there at all.
Okay.
Or object template for the same argument.
All right, I'll make this comment. All right, then I think that is it, and we're a little over time. Is there anything else that anybody would like to briefly talk about before we end this week's meeting? All right, then I thank you all for your time. And